want to fend for myself, and I want to build people up for them to fend. Hey, everybody. Clark Fredericks here with the Free Like Me podcast. Guests come in here, they speak their truth, and they walk out of here with that shame and that pain left behind, and they walk out free like me. Whew. If you want to be a guest, reach out to me on any social media site. Send me a private message. Go to my website, freelike-me.com, and fill out a form, and we'll set up a consultation call. If you're interested in my coaching program, same thing. And my book, Scarred, it's coming July 29th. Get your pre-order in. In this very studio, after this podcast today, I'm recording another part of the audio version, so that'll be available also. And this week, I have two women here who I've wanted to have on the show for a long, long time. Lara and Patty, two of the 5 Fortney sisters who were abused by a Catholic priest. And they testified at a House Judicial Committee hearing. And I heard what this priest did, and I got really disgusted and pissed off. And ever since starting the podcast, I've wanted to have them on. And I want you to hear what these Catholic priests are capable of, and why I have such disdain for the hierarchy of the Catholic Church. Not the faith, but for the hierarchy. So we're going to meet them and get right into it. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
You made a long trek to get here. I am humbled and honored that you did so.
Wasn't so bad.
No.
What was it, 3 hours?
Yeah, no.
Even getting stuck in traffic, it wasn't so bad?
Well, the traffic, but that's okay.
Yeah. So, I just, in the intro, I mentioned, how we met at the House Judicial Committee hearing when we were trying to get the new statute of limitations law passed in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And even though you guys were from Pennsylvania, you testified working as advocates because the priest that abused you had originally been in New Jersey and then had so many cases against him, they moved him, instead of filing charges or defrocking him, they moved him out to Pennsylvania to let him start all over again. And unfortunately, you two and your sisters all became victims. And that's where I met you. And ever since I started this, I had in my mind, I got to get the Fortney sisters. Because usually priests are, you think, with the young boys, and yet your little devil liked young girls. So I know it's going to be a tough conversation at times. So I'm honored that you'll speak freely about it. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So just let's start off. I mentioned Pennsylvania. Where in Pennsylvania did you guys grow up?
Little town called Steelton, right outside of the capital city of Harrisburg. So It's like a little suburb of Harrisburg. Yeah. And it's a steel town, very diverse town, very Catholic town. Uh-huh. Very Catholic town. There were several churches in our area. You would have like the Italian church, the German church. That's how.
Catholic.
Yeah. All Catholic, yes.
5
different,
in one little town.
5 different churches in one little town. And we just happened to be at the German church, but I don't know if that was planned or I don't remember. I just know that we grew up in a Catholic area and we grew up very Catholic.
Mm-hmm. So your parents, they were devoted Catholics?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They were raised in Catholic orphanages.
Orphanages?
Yeah, they went to church 365 days of the year at those schools.
Wow.
So, yeah, we're learning. We've been learning a lot about our parents, their upbringing recently.
Were they immigrants?
Patty knows more about it.
No, so my mother, the girls went into a Catholic, I guess they would be considered, I don't know if they called it the homes, the Catholic homes. So a home for girls, home for boys. Mm-hmm. And Mom was in a Catholic home with her sisters just because the father was absent in the home. And they felt that, the grandfather felt that it would be better for them to be raised with the nuns and in the Catholic home than in a single parent home. And then my dad, he was from a very large family. He ended up in the home for boys. From what he said, my grandfather had gotten a very bad bout of pancreatitis, and back then it took a very long time. I think it was a 4-year recovery almost for him. He almost died and everything. So my dad and the brothers, a lot of them went into the Catholic home because, I mean, let's face it, they couldn't afford to probably eat, without the dad being there, and they had 12 children.
Wow.
So they were very involved in Catholic life, and then they just, continued with their Catholicism.
And there's more than just the 5 of you who were abused. In your family, how many children?
There's 9 of us.
9. Any boys?
And we had 2 nieces that were raised with us too.
Oh, okay.
Pretty much.
So 11.
1 boy, he's the very middle.
Okay.
4 older, 4 younger.
Wow.
People always think, were my parents trying for a boy? No, my dad just always wanted a big family, and he loves kids. So, yeah.
I don't know if either of you saw it. It came across my phone. I didn't have it in me to click the article yet, but did you see where they just uncovered in Canada at one of the nun-run places, 756 babies in the septic?
I did.
Ay. And I'm like,
I did. I saw.
I gotta watch my mental health.
I couldn't click it.
Yeah,
either.
I couldn't click it.
My sister, one of my sisters, actually sent it to us in a text, and I couldn't. I said I can't.
Me neither. I didn't.
Can't do
I just saw. I did what you did.
Yeah.
I just try to limit as much news as possible. You can only take so much.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I get questions every day from people, and I answer everybody, and then I have the podcast, and I hear this every week.
Yeah, you got to protect yourself sometimes.
And then I'm doing the book audio, and I'm re-talking about it, and I just, I can't go into every article. It's
you can't.
just too much, Yeah, but I saw that, and then when you mentioned that's how your mother and father grew up, I was like, oy.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize the recovery it takes when you, the preparation when you speak, because for me, I'm not speaking for Patty, but it manifests in an angry way. Even on the way here, she said, "Are you okay? What's wrong with you?" Because I get so tied up in my anger from it. I don't think, but my body tells me I'm angry. And then I'm recovering 3 days after. Right. So usually when I speak, I always make sure my 3 days are clear, although these next 3 days are full for me. So I wasn't strategic.
Maybe that'll be good.
But I have to say, our parents, they have both told me that they loved their Catholic upbringings. Neither one they weren't abused. They loved their, the home. They felt that it was actually good for their lives. For those years, that they have fond memories. So, I think I believe them. I don't think they're hiding abuse or anything. I think I do believe them.
Probably the worst example I've heard was that there's in the Vatican, or maybe it was Rome, where there was a home for deaf, mute children. And
I saw that too.
The priests were just having a field day with them, and they can't explain what's happening to them. And I'm like, that.
I saw that too. That's awful.
Oh, it's the
awful.
worst case scenario you can think of.
It's awful. Yeah. So imagine having parents that were raised in the faith and had such a really genuinely positive, whatever you want to say, experience. And then they learned this about their own children, thinking they brought them up in this faith that was going to enhance them and be as beautiful as it was for them, and then learning that it wasn't.
But my mom also had a philosophy on this. And also through, now that we've been in this so long, we've learned that pedophiles typically abuse those that are from a socioeconomical lower group of people. And my mom's grandfather was very wealthy at the time, and she said they were always chosen to be on the pamphlets, the pictures, so they probably would not have been a targeted victim because of their socioeconomic. The ones that always give the money to the church and are the donors, their kids aren't usually the target. So that's why I think it's been so hard, even with legislature. A lot of when we go in, this is just my opinion and my perspective as I'm gathering all this and learning things. that they haven't had to live this life because they are in a socioeconomic class that they're not targeted like the kids that are from single moms, or, my parents, we weren't well to do, but they were stretched thin with 9 children. So usually pedophiles, right? They usually target those people that they know they can get at easier.
Yeah, I was just going
have
to say,
access to.
Yeah.
I was just going to add, I agree with the socioeconomic as in our case.
Yeah.
Not in all cases, but
Right. Not
I think
in all.
I think that pedophiles look for weaknesses
They do.
in
Oh,
families.
absolutely.
They look for weaknesses and they know where they can get in. And like Lara said, a big family. That even though mom was there all the time, but it was it was to go over to the rectory and count the collection was cool, and like you always want to be the chosen one and all that. So
Right.
he definitely was. We always say he was a genius groomer, and I'm sure we'll get into grooming here in this topic.
absolutely.
But anyway,
Yeah, no, and I think people need to see how the grooming works. It starts and where it ends up, and it's amazing how like they all have like a similar playbook. It's nowadays I can understand it with the internet, but like going back to when you guys were abused and when I was abused, there was no internet, and yet they all seem to have the same couple core things that they, at some point you got to initiate touch and just start off, like I tell her on this show all the time, like, the hair tussle to the normal person, it's like, oh, little Billy, hi, Susie. To a pedophile, it's like, all right, I got to initiate touch.
Right.
Let's start with the hair tussle.
Or sure, like parents, that they say, oh, give him a hug or give her a hug. Like they push. I saw that different than my husband. People say, how did it manifest for you? Hindsight's 2020. I look back on my life. I was like, I had to keep the curtains shut. I was afraid people were always looking in. I didn't let my kids sleep. I hated that they wanted to sleep over anywhere. I was overprotective, and my husband would be like, "Babe, it's okay." And I'm wondering why I'm not okay with it. Like I didn't wonder then, but now I see it all. Like, wow, that's why I would get so like, angry about it.
Was this before you had spoken out?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay,
yeah. This is just during my life with my husband. I remember certain times, and we have had a great marriage, but when there would be tussles or things, it would either be over, me being paranoid about my kids for some reason, their safety or who they were, not who they were with, but that they were even somewhere that I couldn't control who they were with. It just, that's, I think, the thing that people think about. But going back to grooming, that's what we as a family, when we talked about this, like, what is God's purpose for us in all of this, right? I know for me personally, people don't talk about grooming enough. People don't educate people. Years ago, when we all were being abused, goodness, what is that? 40, I guess I'm going to tell my age, 53. It was 43 years ago for me. It was taboo to even see a commercial on TV with a woman in a bathing suit, or to talk about a tampon or a commercial of a tampon. Like nobody knew the word molesting or pedophile back then, or if they do, they didn't talk about it. At least we never heard it. Yeah. And so it's easy for people today as parents to go, shouldn't they have known? Well, they're living in today's times. They're basing everything on today, not 43 years ago. You have to filter everything through that lens.
Right, and it's still happening today, but the grooming has evolved.
Yes.
It's different now. There's a lot of, molestation is alive and well.
Right. And social media is now a big part of
being,
that.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. The lure. And it's been watered down too. Like, and I don't want to get political or anything, but everything has become desensitized. Right. The world has desensitized everything because you should just so naturally be accepting of this thing. We were abused in a bathroom. So when they talk about people in certain bathrooms. That makes my skin crawl. Somebody would think it's because I may be from a certain political party or not. I've never voted just politics. But people have to understand everybody has a story and why they think and believe and feel the way they do on certain things. And so that's what we want to educate people on, the grooming part of it. And everybody has a story, you know, so.
The internet trolls, you know, on
Yeah.
like interviews I've done, you know, that you'll get a few, you know, jabs and it'll be like, and I mean, maybe you've heard this too, like, you know, it'll be like, oh, you must have they'll leave a comment. You must have enjoyed it because you kept going back. You know, I would have ran right to my parents. So, you know, like the adult version now knows exactly what the 8, 9, 10-year-old who's just been abused would have done 40 years ago.
Right.
Bravo for you. No, you
Right.
don't. You have no idea what you would have done back then.
No,
You know, and it's just
there's no truth to that.
no, you can't. You can't say as an adult what you absolutely would or wouldn't have done as an abused 8-year-old. During the time frame we're talking, where it wasn't even discussed, and you didn't even question adults.
Sure. Right. Or the lure. Like I know that I've often thought people thought, oh, because we were getting paid to count the collection, we kept going back for more. We didn't even know we were abused to know we were going back for more. Sure, I wanted pudding pops that he bought me at the grocery store and knew I loved those, and we didn't get those at home. Sure, I loved going to the beach because we never had a family vacation because my dad worked around the clock to support us, you know, but we didn't connect it like that. And today's mentality with people, they just can easily, you know, go, well, you deserved it. You kept going back for more. Like, oh, how insane is that of a thought? And, and that's what I just realized that wow, I've justified it that, you know, they obviously have something mentally wrong with them if they're thinking that way too, because that is just a horrible way to think about a child. They are looking at the 53-year-old. They're not looking at the 10-year-old or the 2-year-old that my youngest sister was when she was abused.
Right. Right. So you know exactly at 2 what you would have done back then.
Right.
you
Exactly.
know? Like, come on.
Right.
It's infuriating, but you know, and I also wonder, like, when people make idiotic comments like that, are they stuck in their own pain and they hate to see people healing ahead of them?
Yes.
So they lash out.
Maybe.
You know,
They do, or some people test. Because I know I've had that happen before, and on the other side of this, knowing this person's story, some people are saying things about things to see how others will react, so that they know if they come out, how it'll be perceived. Does that make sense?
Yeah. They're testing the waters.
They're testing the waters.
Yeah.
And
they're throwing out the worst case scenario type of question or response.
I skip by them. I don't even read them.
Yeah.
I can't.
well, hurting people usually hurt people. We hear that all the time, right?
Right.
And it is true, you know. I mean, we had a really big troll at one point, and I was really afraid for my sister's life.
Really?
People don't realize the damage they do when they lash out. And I was afraid for her because, you know, she did make a comment, you know, on, I don't know what.
I don't remember what it was
Facebook.
either.
And it was in her grief and anger of things. And this one couple just kept coming after her and attacking her. And then one of the former local newscaster that now was working for the Catholic Conference was the one trolling her. I mean, crazy. This adult man that's supposed to be an intellectual, sophisticated man that now is coming after our sister. Well, thank you for that, because that could have been, thank gosh, her attempt on her life didn't succeed. But
Wow.
yeah, they don't realize the damage that it causes.
Yeah, I mean, I literally made a post when the new pope, you know, got elected, and you know, I just like scoffed at it, and this and I had a lot of comments, and this woman literally like went to like 20 people on the comment list, and you know, like made comments, and she'd made a comment about me, and she's like, all you do is bash the Catholic Church. What about all the other religions with their abuse? So I'm like, all right, to be fair. So I Googled it, and it was like nothing. Like, I mean, yes, there's some cases, but like the Catholic Church was like way up here, and then all the others were down here. And I posted that. I'm like, here's why I mainly pick on the Catholic Church. It's not even remotely similar to any other faith.
Yeah. Well, people have said that to me several times too. And actually, it is in a lot of churches and big in a lot of churches, a lot of other denominations as well. And even the small little churches, and I believe some people use religion as a business, and pedophiles do as well. We have a good friend in Pennsylvania, his dad. He's a pastor. I don't know, Jimmy Hinton, and I know I can say that name. He has a book out too. He's an incredible guy, and I read his book. But his dad was the pastor of a small church in his hometown, and
was an abuser.
Was an abuser. Jimmy called his own dad out. Wow. He's the one that had him go to the police station. Cool? Yeah,
turned him in.
And so if your own son is convicted enough, because he was abusing his sister too, like people, it's just so sad that they just want to come after you for saying something instead of coming after you and saying, hey, can I ask why you made that comment or why you made that post, like behind closed doors, and just listen. People don't listen enough to each other. They're just keyboard warriors,
right.
And it's so sad. I fight my battle behind the scenes more, just because to preserve my own health, wellness, and, people, they do misconstrue a lot. They always want to see it from their angle rather than someone else's. And they want to protect their church. And I get that. We want to protect the things we love the most. But if you truly want to protect your church, why don't you ask for a meeting from the cardinal, the bishop, the priest that's there, the pastor of your church, and have that conversation of transparency and ask them, what are we doing? What are the protocols of the church that I belong to protect these children? Can I feel confident that if my child is on a field trip with this priest or this nun, that they're not just going to be prayed over, but they are going to be protected, and that there are going to be clearances? And if something happens, is there mandating reporting? Because with the Catholic Church, especially, we know, and, through watching Spotlight, the movie, which is huge for me with and my sister and a lot of us coming out during that time. If nobody has ever watched this movie, you have to watch it. 2016, it won the Golden Globe Best Movie Picture of the Year, all-star cast, Rachel McAdams, Mark Ruffalo. Hey, Mark, if you could hear this, reach out to me. No, but all-star cast. It was incredible. But Phil Saviano, who was the victim, that just like us, were looked at for many years as being the crazy person because he was trying to get his story, and he did the research himself and realized this is a systemic cover-up. Boston Globe. It was all up in Boston area, and he kept going in the Boston Globe, and they're like, yeah, that crazy guy was in here again, wanting to tell a story, and he has a box. He had a cardboard box. My sisters laugh at me because I save everything. In fact, I brought my cardboard box. It's in the car of our report, 900-page report when they investigated him. But he brought this box with him, and in the movie, he has this cardboard box, and it has all his evidence and his picture when he was a child, all of it. And so, but they kept casting him out like a crazy person. Well, it took somebody to believe in him. I believe it was the editor, the new editor that came in that was not Catholic, not tied to the church at all, they were looking for stories, and they're like, let's bring this guy in. Let's check this out. And they listened to him, and they were like, whoa. And this editor said, you, Spotlight, the investigative arm, this is your job. Research this. And that's the movie unfolded. But what it showed is how the entire community, what the church has been so good with, they're light years ahead of everybody else, the Catholic Church. They make sure that they're in good with the chief of police and they're in good with the senators. That's why we can't get these, they're donating to their campaign in these dark funds or however they manipulate it to donate for silence. It's this, the secrecy of silence or whatever you say. But that's why it's so hard to get things done. And for the longest time, there was no mandating reporting for them. And that, and every state needs that. Actually, why isn't this a federal issue? This needs to be a federal issue. I pray for a new administration every time, and the number one prayer over anything is that they have enough guts to be able to go against the grain and the Pope, right? Like, they all go kiss the ring of the Pope. Well, you know what? Who has ever held the Pope accountable? He's been one of the biggest, each one has all hid this up until, well, we'll see. Hopefully this new Pope, it will
He even
demand
has
transparency.
controversy already, though.
Yeah.
He's
so sad.
I think he protected the Chile guy
Yeah.
Yep.
down in Chile.
Yep.
People say, what do you think about the new Pope? I said, well, we always reserve hope. Like, that word is a hard word for us. Cautiously optimistic. That's even, I can't even be cautiously optimistic anymore because you're always let down. But I know there were some good candidates. They never let the good guys win, though, because there's too much that they each have on each other for many, many years, and they're still covering it up. There's still no transparency, full transparency.
Yeah. Somebody said, Pope Francis, he enacted so many laws against, molestation and the priests. And so when I did a deeper dive into it, it was all just like fluff.
Yeah.
It was like
Never been zero tolerance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't
never
like
been.
any mandates. Like,
Well-
all right, yeah, they say this, but it's not mandated by the bishops or the cardinals. So
Right.
it's not implemented.
Or there's camouflage to it. See, in our state, when we had the grand jury report, the attorney general recommended 4 recommendations, right? And one of them included the window, the statute of limitations window, which, for people that don't know statute of limitations, back then it was 2 years civilly that somebody had to come out about their abuse. As a child, you had 2 years. Me as a 10-year-old, I had till I was 12 to come out for my abuse, or 5 years criminally. So that was one of them. The other was, I think, non-disclosure. There were 4, but the one that we really needed was the window, because without a window, there's no true transparency. It's pedophiles are pedophiles all their life. It's an illness. Like, let's say alcoholism. You'll be an alcoholic all your life. You just cannot put yourself in a position to be tempted to alcohol, right? And so with the statute of limitations, if they survive, the perpetrator has survived that, then he's all free. If I came out back then, if I would have come out without the statute of limitations, it would have fell on deaf ears because I had no recourse, civilly or criminally. And if I would have spoken out, then I would have been accused of defamation of character, all of those things, because there would never have been able to be an investigation because we couldn't go to court to do that. And so what happened in our state is, we have a representative who I'm very grateful for that spoke out. Everybody knows this. You can Google it. Representative Rozzi, Mark Rozzi. And he's one of the first people we met with. He shared his story of abuse. We shared ours. He connected us with the Attorney General. At the time, it was Kathleen Kane. Then because people think that Josh Shapiro is the one that started this investigation. He didn't. He's the one that saw it through and picked it up and ran with it to this point. We're still waiting for this window to happen. But long story short, we're going through years of advocating, going and telling our story to all the senators, all the House. And what they do is they take turns, flip-flop, they take turns. The House will approve it, but then the Senate won't. Well, now the Senate will approve it, then the House won't. They always will have a roadblock and, and cushion it. But every time we were at that state capitol, they always made sure that the Catholic conference lobbyists were right there alongside us. I mean, they would almost laugh. They literally would smirk and laugh in our face because they knew, they're like, what do these people think they're going to do? We have the chief of police, we have this, we have the senator, we have the pro temp. Scarnati was it at the time, and Jake Corman. Now they're out, and they're all Catholic that are the pro temp. And now it's Kim Ward, who's tied to the Catholic Church, Western Pennsylvania, whatever. And so they got to they really, I believe, wore Mark out. They did. And so, and
all the victims.
Yeah, all the victims.
And here we are today.
And that's what they do.
And there's so many victims just that hang on by a thread because people think it's all about the money. It has nothing to do with the money. We know as victims it has nothing to do with about the money. Civilly is the only way that we're able to expose our abusers, and there's so many people that want to be able to do that have abusers. I mean, we have friends that have abuser that literally opened a deli down the street and had young girls working there knowing that he was an abuser and was abusing at a college and all these different things. It just really,
and they're never on the list. So that's what the window, people don't understand. What does this window do? The window allows survivors like our friend who couldn't speak out because the statute of limitations, knowing this man has this pizza shop and is abusing it, he's using it as a honeypot to draw these kids in. And if she would speak out, she'd be accused of defamation of character. Well, this man was never on a list. And
he was a priest, by the way, that got defrocked.
Yeah, this one
Oh, really?
Defrocked, yeah. And then got a job as a college professor, and then started abusing older women. It's crazy. I mean,
so when they are on that list, when you can speak out and they're accused, they're on the list. So, but now, because we don't have in Pennsylvania, like New Jersey now has a window, Pennsylvania doesn't have a window. We had the grand jury report, but that's only for Catholics. There are so many people that have abused that are non-Catholic. And so, but what the Catholic Church money has done was paid lawyers and lobbyists to prevent that law from going through. Still to this day, 20 some plus years later, there's still the playbook of not going through when 93% of victims are non-Catholic. So those people cannot get transparency or speak out because the window.
Can't get the law passed.
Right.
And in New Jersey, every hearing we had down in Trenton, there was one organization who would stand up and oppose anything we were trying to do, and it was the Catholic Coalition.
Well, and just recently,
look at the Supreme Court, the New Jersey Supreme Court hearing. Who was there? The Catholic Church.
Oh, yeah.
And I met myself and Fred Merigliano. We met with the lawyer for the Camden Diocese.
Love him.
And their lawyer, said, we can't even start our meeting if you're going to have this 2-year open window, look back. And I said, all right, what if we did a 1-year open window look back? And he tissed me. He's like, oh, Clark. He goes, listen to me. He goes, you will never get a 2-year open window, a 1-year open window, a 1-month open window, or a 1-day open window passed in New Jersey. So you guys are fighting a losing battle, Clark.
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah, and
They're
it just
arrogant.
condescending.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, we have nothing to talk about then, because the other advocates aren't going to go along if we don't have the open window. And that was the end of the meeting. And then your state, Pennsylvania, comes out with this bombshell Attorney General report. And it forced New Jersey's hand, and Senator Sweeney, who had been holding up everything, he was the president. He finally buckled when our own Attorney General said, I'm going to start my own investigation.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, boom, we got our law passed. And here we are 6 years later, and you guys... which forced New Jersey's hand, you guys are still waiting for your law to get passed.
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy.
It is.
Yeah.
But think about the arrogance of that man that said that to you. But that's how secure they make themselves. They make sure that they secure themselves so much that they'll say to you, you'll never get it done. I mean, in the movie, it was like that too. Like they literally are going to people's homes and threatening them. Like I put, honestly, and I put surveillance cameras in my home. Once we were asked to testify, and we had a non-disclosure agreement at that time, right? And we were gag ordered, and we were all afraid to speak out. People can't even believe that we've never even talked to each other. But in that file that I have in the car, there is proof of a letter that my mom saved, letters of our own attorney that we thought was acting on our behalf, but he was really acting for the Catholic Church, and threatened my parents because my one sister called in and wanted information and was demanding information at our own attorney's office. And he sent he sent my sister a letter, but it got redirected to my mom, thank God, because Carolyn was in college. And in the letter, it said, if you say, and if your daughter says anything about this, we will come after you for everything that you've gotten.
Let's go into to the priest, and Patty, why don't you tell me his name?
Reverend Augustine M. Giella.
Giella, and you spell that Giella?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I don't call him Father.
Reverend.
I call him Reverend. I don't call him Father.
I don't even call him Reverend. I call him Giella.
Giella.
Or G.
I just remember it would say R-E-V.
Yeah.
I remember his writing.
Yeah.
So he had originally been in New Jersey and had so many cases against him.
Yes.
They didn't know what to do with him.
Well, we found out later. I mean, we knew he was from New Jersey. He had told, trying to think what he told my mom was the reason he got brought here. I think, I know. He wanted to have he wanted to be in charge of a church, but they didn't have a position for him to be at the top, like to be the head pastor or whatever.
In New Jersey?
In New Jersey. He told my mom he had written Bishop Keeler at the time and asked for a position here, and I guess they were friends. And we saw in letters that, they had even nicknames for each other, and they brought him here, and he wound up on our doorstep.
Yeah. He was at another parish first.
Yeah. Actually,
Hanover.
he was in Hanover. You're right.
I always like to say that because there may be.
It's true.
I believe there's victims there that maybe
I'm
haven't
sure.
spoken out.
Oh, yeah.
So he started in Newark, New Jersey, right?
Well, it was the Archdiocese of New Jersey.
Newark.
But it's Newark, yeah.
It's Newark.
Okay.
Yeah, Newark
Yeah.
Diocese, and then was
Diocese.
brought here to Hanover.
Hanover,
and then
to us.
then came to our church
He was an associate pastor, and then
in Hanover,
and
then
wanted his own church.
Yes.
So they
so then
finally
that's
gave.
what it was. Yeah.
Meanwhile, all these accusations are already against him, and
Oh,
they
in
still
New
give him his
Jersey.
own church.
They did.
in New
They did.
Jersey. Yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
So they knew
They did.
before they gave him this
Absolutely.
position.
Absolutely.
Well, that's
how dirty he was.
That's all proven.
Yeah.
That's all in the files.
Yeah. Hopefully, with the grand jury report that now New Jersey has to produce, we'll learn even more, is what we're hoping.
Yeah.
At least as an associate pastor, he's under somebody who maybe is straight and narrow and can keep an eye on him.
Right.
But then to give him his own church,
Yeah.
knowing what he already is
Right.
just unfathomable.
Right.
And he is known in New Jersey. I mean, he's considered like one of, like, I don't want to say everybody's abuse is horrible, but I guess he was known as like one of the like really bad ones, with so many victims and really disgusting things,
It's the word you just said there, disgusting things. It
Yes.
wasn't like simple abuse. And I'm not trying to minimize
It starts
abuse.
that way. That's grooming. It
Yeah.
starts that way.
But, it
But
was
but
really,
he took it to another level
Oh, yeah.
with what I heard you guys say at that hearing that day.
yeah.
So we'll get into that in a second, and I want you to explain that, so
Right.
the audience can be like, oh my God,
Yeah.
because it is a oh my God
To
type
understand it.
thing.
Right.
Well, and the oh my God is that he wasn't just doing it to us. It's that they knew he did this oh my God stuff too, or oh my gosh stuff too, back in New Jersey, and still allowed him to move around. Because when we did finally come out, they raided his home and found all the evidence. We have the file, all the evidence and all the initials of the girls from years past that he was doing this.
They found over 200 pictures.
And
They
vials
couldn't identify over 200 children from pictures that he
Yeah.
had saved. That's
and
just
specimens.
200 plus
over
children.
yes, that they could not identify.
So all these disgusting things he did with you guys, he did in New Jersey as well.
Oh, I'm sure of it. Yeah.
We've met some victims
Yes.
too, and the stories they're very similar.
Similar.
Yeah, we met two sisters that day when we met you, the judiciary, and their father was there, and that was it was a beautiful day, but a tough day. But
Ooh,
that
that was
part
tough.
of it's kind of a love-hate thing. You love meeting the other victims, but you hate that they were victims. So your immediate family. That's why I felt like we were immediately brother and sister with you, and several others. But yeah,
I just remember from that day how exhausted I was. And I see my face in pictures with Senator Vitale, and I just look like drained. It was
too.
it's tough being around so many people that were victimized, and everybody's wanting to get their 5 minutes in, and they're banging the gavel, because everybody's going along, and crying,
it was
and
awful.
it's horrible.
It
And
was-
you didn't have to worry about your mascara running like I did. You can cancel that if you want to.
no. Let's talk about the grooming process.
Right.
How did he start with you, Patty? Like, what was the initial little things in going forward?
I met him.
So, I mean, to really get into that would be, what happened was when he came to our church, he met Lara first, and she'll tell that story, I'm sure. But then he ended up, after meeting her, learned obviously that we have this big family, and we have found out since that they do look for big families, because then they have more chance of having more victims. And he came to our house, and we ended up going to count the collection, and that's how I got to know him, through Lara, meeting him and everything. Well, I started going to count the collection. Now, I was just turned 13 when I met him. I was too old for him for certain things, but I was just right for other things. And so what he used me for is that I was in charge of my little sisters, Lara on down, to bring them to church. I was supposed to watch them and everything. But what he did was he became my best friend, my ally. He knew that, I grew up in this big family. I didn't get the phone when I wanted it. I wanted to be this teenager. And so he allowed me to be that teenager I wanted to be. And so he you name it, he let me do it. I could talk on the phone. I could, anything we wanted, to eat, he would get us. Okay. And then little by little, he started abusing me and using me to groom the young ones. So
Sure, I was her younger sister that always wanted to do and be everywhere she was, and wanted to do and be everything she was.
right.
So if something happened or did something to her, I wanted it too.
He was really sick. There was something, I don't know what it was with him. It's really disgusting, but he was very into bodily things like menstruation. He was into feces and urine, and
The hymen.
and so he started by teaching me sexual education, he called it. And he was concerned that I didn't have my period yet, and I was 13, but I was a dancer, ballet, and you're always skinny and all that. And so he wanted to make sure that I understood the human body and sex and all of these things. And so, but he was smart, very smart. I mean, he's genius groomer, because I have found out that he used like Playgirl or magazines with my little sisters, but with me, he wouldn't do that. I was 13. I would have been like, oh, what is this? He used National Geographic. He used statues. He was from Italy, or he was an Italian priest. So he would talk about how in Italy, sexuality is free, and being a priest here in the States is different. And so he would speak these things, and I would think, oh, okay, it's okay. And the other thing he would do that was the biggest thing in grooming us is that he would spend time at our home, and my parents would entertain him in our home, you know, for dinner and everything. And that was a big deal. We had an Amish table that was built, and my dad had the king chair, and my mom had the queen chair, and we had these big, long bench seats. Yeah. You know, it was like a big picnic table right in the middle of the room. And my dad would get up, and he was able to have the king chair. And it was all just a funny thing. My dad was the king, you know, but my dad wasn't like that. It was like, but the priest got the honored space in the home. But he would talk about, I remember stories, I mean, vividly. One of them was about a 4th grader, a girl who got her period while she was on the playground, and he saw that she had a stain, like from the back. He saw that she had blood on her pants, and that, and he's telling my parents this. Now this is at a time where Lara said, you didn't even have a tampon commercial. So I'm listening to my priest tell my mom and dad about a story about a girl that had menstruation going on, and how he took her into the rectory and got a tea towel, and he folded it up and talked to her and showed her how to put it in and talked to her about this. And so then when he did these things to me, right, and would come into the bathroom and have to, once I got my period, and would have to check me and make sure my flow was okay and all these things. And he would save our tampons. Well, we didn't have tampons then, but save our pads and different things. We had to roll them and put them in the trash can and not throw them away. It was like, well, he talks to mom and dad about this stuff, so it's okay. And Lara and I have talked about this. It's funny. I when I went through counseling, this was a big thing that it was very hard for me to try to understand. Why didn't I tell anybody? Like, I was 13, right? Why didn't I tell anybody? He never told me, don't tell anybody. Like,
really?
Never. Like other abusers, right? Like some of my sisters, he did, threatened all that, but not me. Because he knew me. He knew that he became my friend first. I looked at him like my friend, my doctor, my protector, the things he would say to me. It blew my mind. And I thought, but at the same time, I'm 13. Why didn't I, if it was okay, say, when I remember one time being with 2 girls in a bathroom at school, and the one got her period, and I didn't have my period yet. And I was thinking, and I remember that he had asked me to cut off my pubic hairs and lay them on this thing, because this piece of toilet paper. And he handed me the scissors in the bathroom and everything, because he wanted to check to make sure that I was okay and developing. And this is like crazy stuff, right? I never told anybody this, but yet, I remember when she had her period and stuff, why didn't I say, I remember them saying, Patty, why didn't you have your period yet? That's so weird. Like, you're the last one. Everybody, because everyone then, we knew who had their periods and who didn't in class, you know? And I never said, well, Father checked me and I'm okay.
Right.
Why didn't I? I somewhere knew it wasn't right, but I didn't know it wasn't right. We're kids, you know? Yeah. Like, but isn't that crazy? And I never told anybody. But yet, if I believed like I did up until I was in my 40s, never even thought about it being wrong. Even after we found out about Carolyn and everything, it never clicked. Oh my God, what he did to me was wrong.
Until you were in your 40s.
I was in my 40s. I was in a counseling session with my pastor and my husband at the time. And my pastor is the one that got it out of me, because I had broken down about my sister and her abuse.
All right, so...
But anyways, it's just crazy how grooming works.
Well, you know, he's the hip priest, you know, he's the Italian, you know, priest, and he's befriending you, and you're his confidant, you
But
know,
not only
almost
that-
making you like equals,
Yes,
you know,
that's
like my
what-
guy
right.
did
For
too.
me, yeah.
But not only that, everywhere we went with them, people literally like cleared the way for him. That's how they are with priests and reverends. They are so enamored. They put these men, fallible men, up on pedestals. You know, it's like an idolatry thing, which we know what idolatry gets you in the Bible. Like you're
Right.
cast in the lake of fire if you're an idolater. And there's so much idolatry that we would go to the bank to put in the collection and they'd be like, clear the way and fawn all over him. Or we go, they'd give him free food. They'd give him. And so when you're a
It was a big
kid,
deal to be with him.
when you're a kid and you see that, you would never speak on, who would believe you? Who would believe you? You know? So, but I just had a revelation, and Patty remembers a lot of vivid abuse. I remember things, but one of the things she just said that I went, wow, you know, he always spoke to me about the hymen. The hymen. I didn't know what a hymen was when I was younger. Now I know that with a female, that when you have your first act of sex, that's, people say, you know, it's the
Breaking.
street is
Yeah.
pop your cherry, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
But I have never had that experience
Yeah.
in my life. And Patty, when, you know, for me, he groomed me. And when she just said about my parents, and that story she said about, well, the girl had a stain on her. Well, maybe he was preparing the way.
Yeah.
If I had a stain, or my sisters had
Whether
a
that
stain
story
from
ever
that.
happened or not, we
right,
don't know.
Oh, yeah. There were so many of those.
This is how they calculate it, that if this would happen, then I've got my story.
Oh, yeah, I
straight, or
remember
whatever.
he was showing me National Geographic magazines, okay? Literally, he was down on the floor with me in the
Right.
that room where his desk was and the TV right there.
Yep.
And had statues and stuff. And he goes, now, Patty, people who have evil in their hearts will look at these and think these are nasty. Like these are, he said, the human body was created by God. It's a beautiful thing. It's not, and at that moment, I'm having nasty thoughts. I'm like, oh my God, he's talking about me. I'm nasty.
Right.
So why would I ever tell somebody that I was looking at this magazine and it was a nasty thing, right? I would never.
Right.
He did that with
Yeah.
me, and I was like, I never told anybody that ever. I mean, never.
And for me, it was the word squeamish. I have a Polaroid, because he used Polaroids, but I found a Polaroid picture. I think it's in evidence. I don't have it anymore. I'm pretty sure I gave it for evidence for the grand jury report. But it's me sitting at the collection table, and I'm literally looking up at him like this, scathing. But with me, when he would do things, he would, and I like, you know, when I would feel weird about him, he would say, "Oh, you're so squeamish. He would shame me for feeling the way I did, like it was bad to be squeamish, you know? So I didn't want to be perceived as being squeamish. So I'm going to go along with it.
Go along with it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And think about this too, you know, we're in the rectory and it's Patty, Lara, Teresa, Marisa, Carolyn, all of us there. And we would stay all day. You know, we would count the collection. We would go to Pizza Hut. We would
to
make
the
the
grocery
deposit.
store
We
with
would go to
them.
the grocery store, get stuff like
Cook
this was
dinner.
every Sunday, and we would cook dinner, and we would just all hang out.
Mm-hmm.
And that he would, in front of the little ones, hug me, kiss me on the lips.
Yep.
Put his hand on my butt, snap my bra strap, like things like that.
Pull
Like
him into your
in
groin.
front of the
Yeah.
girls, the younger ones, so that they would know, oh, it's okay. Patty lets him do it. See, he is brilliant.
And he did that with my friends too. I have a dear friend that has come out since this that I know was with me, and a few others that were with me.
Can you remember the story at the dinner table with the girl with bleeding? Like, what was the segue into that? Can you even recall? Like, how did he even? Why was?
Yeah, he would talk about the duties of a priest. Like it was,
Last rites.
there's so many things that we have to do. You couldn't believe it. I remember he one of his first stories he ever told was of a car accident, and how, the gear shifts back in the day were remember the wheels, and you'd have the, thing, and how that had pierced a woman's head and he had to give her last rites. That was his segue, talking about the duties of a priest and how it's so wide, and he would talk different than other priests. Like, around us, he would swear. He would swear, like slip up, ship cool Dan in hell, damn in hell, and everything else. And we're like, oh, okay. And he's like, oh, Italian priests. It was always, Italian priests talk different. In Italy, things are different.
Right.
They're not like Americans are uptight.
Right.
So it was always making you feel like you were the squeamish one, the idiot, the uptight American. Plus, I was 13. I was 13 to 15 during my abuse. So for me, it was cool. I have a priest that swears, even though I never told anybody he swore. Do you see what I mean? I protected him because he was my go-to. He was my guy.
Did he ever let you guys drink wine?
Yes.
Or did he force, here, drink this?
So when I met him in the 5th grade, he was coming into my room to look for volunteers because he had just moved there and he needed help with unpacking boxes.
Are you going to a Catholic school?
Yes. So our Catholic school in our town was 1st through 4th grade was at one school, and 5th through 8th was another. So I was in the 5th grade, and I quickly volunteered. And actually, he looked like my grandfather. Our grandfather had just passed, and I remember him looking like my grandfather. So I felt comfortable volunteering, and so I started working at the directory. And one of my jobs was to do the bulletins. It's back when you had to do the bulletins, like it was in this big machine and blah, blah, blah. Well, there was this, he made sure I knew where the liquor closet was, where the altar wine was. And Patty and I, we talk about this a lot because there are so many times that we remember. Now we talk about it. We never talked about it. But when we talk, our stories are like, he did that? Yeah, me too. And so I would always fall asleep. And we really, this is just speculation probably, but we believe that maybe we were date rape, drug.
I absolutely think, I know we were.
He let us smoke his pipe. He had a pipe and he would pack it and we'd pack it. And he would always let me, I smoked his pipe. Did you smoke his pipe?
No, for me, he never brought out alcohol with me. Just like he never showed me a Playgirl, he used National Geographics.
Right.
And statues.
Mine was statues.
Right. And because to me at 13, I would have known a little too much. I might have found him out. Like that might have crossed the line with me. He was careful with that. Whereas Lara was younger. You see what I mean? I don't know. This priest was really smart when I think back to
he went
the
from
way
one to the
he
next.
did. He went from one to the other.
I
but
was first.
It was his preference was the youngest. Okay, because he started molesting our sister when she was 2 years old. And the reason we know, people say, "Oh, well, how do you know that?" Because we have there was honestly there was. Photo evidence of the whole thing. Yeah, it was.
Video.
My mom lived with me. Our mom lived with me for 10 years, and I learned a lot. But at that time, I had just moved actually to New Jersey, and my mom would call me, and she said, "I don't know what to do. The detectives want me to view. They've given me the option to view the evidence." She said, but Alice, the counselor, didn't think it would be good because she said that even grown men had to get up and walk out. Like grown men just couldn't watch what was on because they had videoed all the evidence and then they showed it on a big screen to the detectives, and because he had crossed us over state lines, so. When he was found out, he was in New Jersey, but then our police department was involved, so it was a big old thing.
You mentioned two things, and for anybody who doesn't want to hear the graphic stuff, you can tune out now. But you mentioned two things, and there's more. And let's just get into how he did all those. So you mentioned he had you cut your pubics off. I didn't know that before.
Yeah.
And that was to just make sure you're progressing.
Well, he asked me if I was getting hair down there. This was before anything happened.
I know what to look for. Let me see, make sure everything's okay.
Check. The bathroom was his
his place.
Right.
It was his
weird.
place of molestation. That
So,
room.
so the pads with the blood, he would be like, save those.
Yes, we weren't allowed to.
How did he get feces and urines?
He would
Urine.
get it. He had a contraption on the toilet. What was that thing? It was
don't
like a metal contraption.
Again, I thought because he's from Italy, they do things
Yeah.
different.
And he would save, and they actually found all that was part of the evidence. He had petri dishes that were in refrigerators that were labeled with initials, and it was crazy.
And what would he tell you for the feces and urine he was doing? Just making sure you're
God.
healthy.
I didn't know he was collecting anything.
Well, I knew it was going into that. Was in New Jersey.
Yeah, I didn't
That was
know.
in New Jersey, not
Oh,
in
that-
Harrisburg
yeah,
home.
yeah,
that was in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what
I
he
didn't know
said,
he was
actually.
collecting ours. I just remember in New Jersey when
Trying
we
to
were
think
when
what
we were
he would've
cleaning
said.
for him. I saw in the refrigerator there was something, and it was just weird. So
that's
and
what they found. They
yeah,
found so
I was
much.
like, what is that? But
Yeah,
I,
but
I didn't know. I mean, I was too
that
young.
was more. I hate to say their name, but that was more Teresa and Carolyn in New
Yeah.
Jersey with that craziness with that. But you weren't allowed.
So he would collect urine,
Yep.
collect feces,
Use
collect
tampons.
tampons.
Yep.
Yeah,
your
tampons
pubic
later
hair,
in life.
Yep.
Yeah, Or I should say
underwear,
Polaroid
after
pictures.
the first year.
underwear,
Oh yeah,
Also,
he
I
had
mean-
underwear. He had underwear, and pictures were his
and then
thing.
Polaroid
Yeah.
pictures
Polaroid
of all
pictures
of
was
you.
his thing.
Yeah, so with me, he started, it was, let me pose you for your boyfriend. Mm-hmm. Okay, because I got a boyfriend. And I actually got those pictures back from the boyfriend when the whole thing, I contacted him and he had them. He had some pictures. And it was like, in bed with taking all your clothes down and making you look like you're naked. So for me, I wasn't fully naked. For me, it was different. Now, my sisters were raped by him. I wasn't raped by him. For me, it was all of the other weird stuff,
Yeah.
But my younger sisters were raped.
They were raped.
Yes.
And as far as I know,
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't raped, but there were a lot of other
She's
things.
never, but like she
Yeah.
said, Laura doesn't remember a lot yet.
Right.
I remember some things.
Yeah.
I remember some things. I mean, for me, he talked about a chastity belt. It was always about my period too, but the hymen was the big thing and showed me how to wear that. I didn't know what a chastity belt was. People probably don't know, but
Would he want to see your breasts to make sure
oh
you're
yeah,
developing?
always,
Right?
yes, yeah.
He never wanted to see mine, but he would feel them.
Yeah.
He would feel mine on the
Yeah.
outside of the clothes.
Or
he
snap
didn't.
your bra a lot, or put his
Well, that
finger
was
there
in
to
front
make
of the
sure
kids,
There was
just-
enough room in your bra for you.
So he would snap my bra in front of the girls
Right.
because then that would show that it's okay to mess with me.
Right.
That's what he did. It was brilliant. Really.
Well,
when
and
you
for
think
him,
about
it started with Tootsie Rolls on the playground. He would
Yeah.
have his pockets filled with Tootsie Rolls, and the playground was right across the street. And he'd walk over, and he's a priest, and everybody swarms to him, and here's the Tootsie Rolls given out.
Yeah.
And
We found out, it's funny, when you're from a family, a big family, right? And you have everyone that's, the five of us, we all find out later in life that we were abused and we talk about it. Well, we thought we were the only ones from our area. We found out we weren't. And one of the things that was a bombshell actually for us during the reading of the grand jury report, we were all on the stage and they were reading our story out of the book. It was one of the ones that was out of the big report. They read ours. And part of it said that in 1987 that there was a young girl at Bishop McDevitt High School that reported that he was trying to come in on her in the bathroom and do things to her in the bathroom, and he said, but the Fortney girls let me do it. And so you think about like how crazy that is. We thought we were the only ones. Of course, we've learned now that we weren't, but he just had a real sick fetish.
But we also learned the systemic cover-up too.
Oh, yeah.
Because that girl told a teacher. That teacher told the principal. The principal told the diocese. The teacher after the grand jury reached out to us because she had to but she testified, right?
Came to my house.
Came to our house. But it never went to the police. guess who the guy at the diocese was that covered it up for 5 years?
Who's that?
The former priest of ours at that rectory that was now acting, what was he acting as?
He was a
at the
Monsignor or something.
diocese, but he was in
Yeah.
control of something at the diocese
I forget.
for 5. That's why they made him retire. When that girl went, we didn't know why they made him retire. And so that Monsignor Hugh Overball, it's in the grand jury
Yeah.
report, covered up our abuse for 5 years. And we believe those were the years that our youngest two were, or well, the
Right.
younger
That
sisters.
the abuse would have stopped then.
It would have stopped.
Do you get that? Like it would have stopped then.
They didn't
But
tell my
you know what
parents.
you know what they told the teacher? She's sitting in my house and tells my mom that they told her that my mom already knew about it and that she was okay with it, that she had been okay with it and they were dealing with it, like that my mom knew. My mom didn't know anything. I mean, do you see how twisted they were?
Just so the audience understands this
Right.
part, because that was a
Yeah.
little quick to go through it.
Sorry.
So a classmate goes to a teacher because this priest tried to do stuff with her. She goes to a teacher. The teacher goes to the principal. The principal goes to the diocese, which was your former pastor.
Yeah.
Who was
Not a
anything.
pedophile.
He had
We
dinner with
loved
us at
him
our
too.
table.
But
Same thing.
But now he covers for this guy.
He's covering. And,
They-
for the bishop of our,
So they force your pedophile priest to retire. Don't say a word to you guys why. It was because this girl said he's doing it to the Fortney sisters.
No, well, okay, so hold on. That was in 1987. He was not forced to retire then, Laura. No, he was forced to retire when Carolyn's case came out. Right.
Yeah.
So that had happened, right? What she meant was he was forced to retire later. At that point, he was still doing his thing. They didn't do anything.
Right.
They literally told the teacher, "It's fine. The family already knew. We figured it out. She was wrong. Like the Fortney girls, don't let them do anything. She's wrong."
right.
The mom already knew. They were alerted. My mom's like, nobody ever talked to me about anything. So then fast forward.
All right, so you're saying they had an opportunity right then
Absolutely.
to stop everything.
Absolutely.
And it would have prevented your younger
It would've-
sisters
it
from
would've
getting
prevented
raped.
5 more. It would have prevented 5 more. It had already started the abuse, but it would have prevented 5 more years.
It would have
of
prevented
raping
us-
and
right.
abuse for my younger sisters.
Yeah.
I mean, we sat on that stage,
Right.
and if you watch the grand jury report when that was read, we fell apart because to us that was so like
was re-victimization.
Oh my
Right.
God. In 1987.
But it was also validation because that report was validation because through the years, whenever I did have the want to tell someone, I would start saying something and they'd look at me like I was crazy. But I always disguised it with Carolyn's case because her case is the one that came out years ago. It was only about Carolyn at that point. We didn't even know Teresa and, we didn't know that. But I would then just push away from it and go and not say anything, so.
All right.
And whereas me, I was different. I didn't even know. I didn't even connect the dots.
During the years of abuse, with the grooming, like you guys never spoke to each other about it. Like you never left one day on the walk home and be like, that was a little creepy.
No.
Like, that was a little weird.
Yeah, isn't that
was-
crazy? I can't believe we didn't either.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it is weird.
I mean,
And I wasn't even threatened.
My brother and I
Yeah.
never spoke about. We
But
were
you
abused by
you
the
were
same
threatened,
guy.
right? You were threatened?
Yeah.
And was
I
your brother threatened?
He's dead now.
Sorry.
So yeah, that's
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, but mom
I-
did say to mom. I remember mom saying, "Don't, we're not allowed to say anything. We can't say
yeah.
anything because our
No, not
Our
about Laura. He's
psychologist-
talking. No, he's talking about when we were little, walking home.
no, I know that
we were
but,
little
but
walking
in
home.
the context of it, our psychologist, she also agreed that it was good to not let this be in the public because it would maybe hurt Carolyn. She was only 14 at the time. Like, don't talk about it.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And then in the settlement back then report, we weren't allowed to talk to anybody. And my mom made sure we knew we can't talk to anybody about
You're
this. 'Cause
talking
it's
about that, though.
the
He's talking about when we were little kids at the rectory and then we left
Oh,
and walked
yeah,
home.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
no,
we
no,
never
no.
talked
Yeah.
about it.
No.
It's because we didn't
No,
even
we didn't know.
get
It was,
it.
yeah, I didn't know what it
We didn't get it.
Yeah, when you're that
like,
little.
But Carolyn, she was told not to tell because she was little, right? You would think I would have said something, but I didn't even.
Well, he normalized periods
Everything.
and
He
normalized
everything, yeah,
Like
with
I'm
that.
just all I'm doing is making sure you're developing, right?
I
You
can
know?
remember.
He
I
made
can't
it his
even tell
job.
you.
That was his job to do this. That's how he
It was.
normalized it.
I vividly remember sitting on that step in the kitchen and thinking, Mom and Dad are okay with these stories. This is crazy. He's taught, okay, this is, wow. Like it was so.
Because being devout Catholics, your parents were
yeah.
probably very strict
Well,
about
yeah.
what was said. Cursing was probably a no-no, right?
Oh, right. Oh, you
Our
couldn't
parents
curse.
Talking about sex was a
Oh,
no-no.
No,
She
huh?
wasn't allowed to wear a sweatshirt that had workout across the chest.
Yeah, yeah.
Like-
and
Because
so
it would highlight the breasts.
well, it
Something,
just
right?
might have
Maybe?
made someone think about it, like working out with me. Who knows? I don't know. But I'll tell you what, he wasn't the first priest we had in the house either.
No.
I mean, we had Father Overball in the house. We had nuns in the house. It wasn't new to have someone from the order or whatever in our house. Like, my parents were just like that, and we were friends with. I was friends with Sister Helene, and she came over. I remember she cracked a beer and cracked an egg in a thing of beer, and I couldn't believe it. Like, it was like crazy stuff. Like, I just remember all that little stuff.
Yeah,
but
my first grade teacher was my friend. Yeah, she was good.
But I'm thinking because you guys were so restricted at home with what was allowed, what was talked about,
Right.
sex no, body no, swearing no, drinking no.
Right.
And then you have the priest who's exalted and he's talking sex and talking bodies and talking openly, swearing.
He was God to us.
He's
Yeah.
So it's
That's it.
I think for me, there was a part of me as a 13-year-old, because I had just turned 13 when he came in. I didn't want anything to ruin it. I loved being there. I loved what was going on.
It was
loved
fun.
I felt respected. I could use the phone.
He gave
I could
me
lay
an
around
office.
and watch
Right.
TV. He would say, "You don't have to watch your sisters while you're here. I'll watch them."
Right.
Knowing now, he took them in other rooms and abused them while
Yeah.
I was enjoying these things. That to me as an adult has been the hardest
To get
thing for
over.
me to get
Yeah.
over.
Right.
Because I think all of us, it doesn't matter what it is. If we hurt ourselves, it's one thing, but if we hurt another person, and all of my sisters told me they forgave me, but and they didn't even need to. But it's like, or that they didn't hold it against me. Like,
Yeah.
but I held it against myself for a long time. I mean, I had to do some work on that. I still do. I still
have.
when my sister tried to kill herself, it's all I thought about. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God.
I should have stopped this.
How did I
somehow.
not? How did? But I
Yeah.
know I didn't know.
And for me, it was because I introduced the monster to the family.
Yeah.
I've always had the shame and guilt.
She
of
raised her
that
hand.
Major in my life.
Right.
You know.
You said, Patty, you said something just a second ago, and my mindset was the exact same thing. You're like, why would I want to ruin this?
Right.
Like my guy, he's a lieutenant in the sheriff's department, pulling up to the lake where we all played, inviting me into his truck at 9 years old. Let's have a beer. He always had a 6-pack in his truck.
Yeah.
And then it would be like, you can't tell anybody I'm giving you beer. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to ruin this. This is the greatest thing in the world. I get to have beer with a lieutenant,
That was the
And
alcohol closet.
So like, why would I want to ruin that? And
Yeah.
he made me feel grown up and on his level and
Right.
best friends.
Well,
I
he
used to-
he gave me the front office. The front office where the secretary normally would be, which he didn't have a secretary for a while. I was the secretary, and that's what I wanted
That's
to
all
be
she
when I was
wanted to
younger.
be.
Teacher
Laura
or
had to have the
secretary.
desk and the this.
So I had the role, he gave me everything. As I'm going through those boxes, his label maker, now I know that label maker was for him to label all of his specimens. But, and his cigar boxes, I don't even know why I still have one. But he gave it to me so I could put all my little note papers in it. And it's with the label maker, I don't know, it's just weird.
So how did...
You still have that?
I don't know why I do. I found it in the basement. I'm like, why do I have this? I think one day, maybe part of me, and a lot of it was, put into evidence. I gave it I think it was to Dan, but part of me just, I didn't even think about it. That's probably why. But now that I see things, now that I know what's going on, I'm like, wait a second. But now I'm like, well, maybe they're going to use that for a movie someday, so I'm going to save the daggone cigar box.
Yeah.
Because there needs to be a spotlight, too, on, not us, on why all these laws won't go through. Why is this not happening? When all of this evidence is there.
We know why, but
I know back when the Jersey law got passed, and I haven't looked at it. Back when you're involved in it, you're looking, but it was 37 states had updated their statute of limitations law. I'm sure it's more by now, except for you guys. You guys are still stuck in the dark ages in Pennsylvania there.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating. I'm sure it's got to be frustrating for you guys, especially. It's mind-boggling.
It's mind-boggling.
Yeah,
it's very frustrating.
Just the dirt and the payoffs and the financing of the campaigns.
And Clark, the amount of people that are waiting for this. I mean, that didn't have their day in court, that didn't have the grand jury report like we say. As sickening as that grand jury report is, it was a gift to us. We were held by a gag order our entire lives, pretty much, adult lives, because of the settlement that they gave for my sister, Carolyn, way back when. We believed, and my mom and dad believed, that all of us were under a gag order. And couldn't speak. So for 26 years, we never said a word. We never even talked to each other. I'm talking grown adults, not even clicking to talk. That's how, it's not just the priest that grooms, it's the entire culture of the Catholic Church that allows this to happen. So you're groomed. I'm not saying, like you said, people say you're a Catholic basher. That's not what we do. But to try to make people understand, you have to understand that world. Unless you grew up like we did, you were on the Catholic basketball team, the Catholic this, the Catholic school, everything was Catholic, right? And so you just, it's so hard to...
Well, you also don't want to be that family almost, because I'll never forget my mom when she was living, I don't know if it was before we were subpoenaed. We actually made the Attorney General's office subpoena us. We were that afraid to speak out. I mean, this is the Attorney General's office that's asking us to testify, and we are putting the Catholic Church above the Attorney General's office. And
we said, no, you got to subpoena us. We wanted to talk.
Yeah.
But we wanted that document because we were afraid.
Wow.
And so...
What were we afraid of?
Yeah.
We literally thought they were going to kill us.
I still have that subpoena.
We did. And we talked to other Catholic Church victims that say the same thing, that they thought they were going to kill them. We all think like that. And Catholics that are in pews right now look at us like we're crazy, but we really thought we were going to be killed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And no one from the church ever reached out
Never once.
Not
one your
person.
old Overton, is it? Overball.
It's like we never
he
existed.
Never
and still
no one.
Even after the Pennsylvania grand jury, no one's ever nope.
It was just
never
imagine
called,
that. Imagine my parents, our parents, I keep saying our parents, and this, they go, okay, to talk to the bishop and to say what happened, that we found out about Carolyn, right? Because we found out because our one niece found naked pictures of her, okay? And the niece brought it forward. But anyways, not one person, wouldn't you be like, oh, this family who has been dedicated to the faith all this time, decades and decades, and raised their children in the faith and everything. I mean, wouldn't you care about this 11-year-old girl? Because she was 11,
When
just
she
turning.
got raped?
She was from 2 years old to 12 years old. She was 11, just turned 12 when it came out. When the abuse stopped when she turned 12. So this is, my sister endured 9 years as a child. And the picture evidence shows rape of every form. I mean, how dare they not come to my parents' house and say, how is she? Is she okay? How are you? I mean, it was like they never existed. These are my parents who loved the faith, brought us up, and wanted us to come up in this beautiful life.
Mm-hmm. You know,
I mean, that is horrifying.
And I think that's why a couple of people asked me, one of the things the church tries to, give victims compensation, and Patty and I never really even wanted any of that. We just wanted to go to court. And the reason for that is because they've never wanted to hear us. They've never wanted to listen. I want to sit face to face and them to hear our story. I'm not going to berate them. I'm not going to tell them anything. I want them to look me in the eye. That's what victims want. And you know what? All of my survivor friends, like we really are lovers. A lot of us that I met, that if they would give us just a little inch of respect to just say, I see you, there would be so much healing for that church. But now some parishioners have, the ones that understand and are grateful for what we're doing because they too want the transparency. They want their church to be cleaned out. My dad said, I would rather, he said this to Patty, and she told me that I would rather my church be this small and pure than this big and dirty.
Of course.
And so, but they just want to continue to be this big and dirty and not atone for it or let that healing and have that healing. They have done that with some, I hear, but they've never done it with us. And I'm still waiting, and I'm hoping he keeps not, their lawyers keep not getting back to us. So I'm hoping that they will.
About a meeting with Tobin, you say?
Yeah, for me, that's my final. We have in every interview, if you watch all of their interviews, that's the one thing Patty and I keep saying, that we want our day in court. And for me, it's never about the money. They didn't have to give me a dime. They didn't. They give me their time. I'm good. But victims do need money. They do. And they deserve it. They truly do. But if they would have just given me their time, it would have been sufficient for me that they cared, but they obviously
you said a
didn't.
few parishioners, reached out.
Yeah.
Didn't some chastise you guys for how dare you?
Yeah, one of my good friends growing up, it was a really crazy situation. I went to her town. I had a conference there, and I went to her town, and I took her to dinner, and because we were best friends when we were younger, and I took her to dinner and got us a hotel room, and we just had some fun catching up time. And at the dinner table, she's like, why did you have to say anything? She's just going on. But I just let her talk. And the more she talked, she said, well, come to think of it. And she started to say some of her abuse. And I looked at her and I went, you were abused too. And it totally changed her. But yeah, there have been people, I've lost business over it because they thought I was Catholic bashing just because I was telling my story. I didn't say any, there are great priests and great nuns. I was at one of the listening sessions. Our family in our diocese, they had all these listening sessions. We thought as survivors,
where the bishop went around.
yeah, the bishop went around with their
different towns.
with their victim person that they had with him, and we literally thought, wow, they want to listen to us. It wasn't for us. It was for the parishioners, for the parishioners to listen to the church explain all that whatever. But we made a point to get up on open mic and share our story. And at one of them listening sessions, I remember it was Berwick, Pennsylvania, because my sisters couldn't go. It was me and my sister Sandra, and I stood up and said, I want to apologize. There were so many nuns and priests in that room, as well as parishioners, and I said, first, I want to apologize to all of you good nuns and good priests that have never victimized anybody. I said, what is so sad is you're a victim too, because the hierarchy of your church is an allowing transparency that it makes every single one of you a victim or like a perpetrator in the eyes of people today. They're wondering, who can they trust? Who's that? Do you know there was a nun that came up to me afterward and she just hugged me and sobbed. She said, thank you so much for speaking out. But they can't say that. They can't speak out because then they may not get a promotion, or maybe it's so messed up.
When you spoke there, did the bishop have anything to say?
Oh, he was mad. No, he did not come to me afterwards. He met with some group afterwards, never came up to me, never said, and I was not mean. I mean, I was like, this is what happened. This is what I'm the less mean of the sisters, if you want to know.
I put it
right?
to them, but
yeah, they're better at putting it, but not me. And that wasn't my intent. My intent was that listen, this is what happened to us, and this is the transparency that all of you parishioners that have children and grandchildren need to be wise to the fact of how this happens.
Right, and the main thing, our message at these listening sessions and our message today has not changed.
Yes.
And it's, if you truly mean what you say, open up every archive, every file, hide nothing, 100% zero tolerance with complete transparency, and then we will believe you. Until then, we have no discussion.
Fight the laws. That's the biggest thing.
We have no discussion.
Yes.
There's nothing to even discuss.
Yeah. And right now, like you see it at Seton Hall. Seton Hall
University. I don't know if you know. We were just talking to somebody about that today.
Yeah. There's. I mean, you can look that up. That they're still covering up.
There's a lot
abuse and
of seminarians,
and it's because it's a powerful university, But look at Penn State that got their. All the sanctions and their butt handed to them.
That's what should happen to Seton Hall.
Right, but it's a Catholic church that's protected by the power, the money. And what needs to stop happening is people need to stop giving all their money, like just freely, because they're going to earn, more in heaven. Well, read the Bible. That's not how you earn your way to heaven, right? I mean, I'm not here to tell anybody but I mean, for me, my personal relationship is with Jesus Christ. It's not with a church, a religion. It's studying scripture for myself, letting the word come to life for me. And when I I just start reading things and I'm like, wait, okay, what I learned, that's not good. And so it's just still that protection, the power over people. And They have so much money and, people leaving them their estates and their homes. Why would you leave somebody so much money that is not a good steward of it? Right. This money is going to paying lawyers and lobbyists for victimization of children.
Have to put into that. Just to keep things quiet.
Go save a small country with that money, or a town.
And just without naming which one of you or your sisters, what was the impact? Has there been drug or alcohol addiction? Has there been? I heard you mention suicide attempt earlier. How about your parents' marriage? What's been the fallout for all of you throughout all this?
Pretty much everything you just mentioned. Yeah. Our parents' marriage, it was very rough. When when Carolyn's case came out, my dad did not work for 2 years. My dad worked all the time. Did not work for 2 years. He was numb. They pretty much were going to lose everything. By the grace of God, literally, they didn't lose the house we grew up in and everything. You name it. I mean, it's been
Marriages.
marriages. I mean,
For me, I was in college at the time, and I was so afraid to ask they were so broken. I was living at home at the time. I was actually the only one at that point living back at home. And I was 20 when it all came out. And I was going to college at Millersville University. And I remember when all the paperwork came in, all of that, and for loans, I was so afraid to ask my parents for help. I got nothing. I mean, I got let into college, but after 2 semesters, I was so broke. My parents were numb. I didn't want to ask for help. I dropped out of college. So I don't have a college degree. My dad didn't give me away at my wedding because I wouldn't get married in a Catholic church. Well, of course I wouldn't. And then, he was broken, and he thought that we were the only family. So he went so deeper into his faith. He thought it was because he wasn't a good Catholic that this happened to him, right? And his daughter. He didn't know it was all of us at that time. It was just my sister Carolyn, he thought. And so for 10 years he wasn't in my life. So I have abandonment issues with that. I love my dad dearly, and he's back in our life, and he's an incredible man. I mean, this man worked so hard. He worked so hard to protect us all of our life, to provide for us. And he counted on his church, to be that help with us.
An extension.
And instead,
that third parent.
Yes.
Exactly.
And instead it harmed us. And he has not been, I hate that he hasn't been to church since.
The same.
He even questions any faith at all right now. And I'm praying for him, that he finds the truth, the way, and the life, which is
And
through
you're
Jesus
still able to
Christ.
have faith. Maybe not Catholic faith, maybe,
Yes,
but faith.
Yes, because I know what true faith
Right.
is now. Faith isn't in a building or the beautiful stained glass windows that really are triggers for me anyway. They're not in the fallible things of this world. It's in salvation in Jesus Christ. It's a personal relationship, and it's hard. It's kind of like before people ask you, when you're dating someone, like with my husband, like, how'd you know? I just knew. And faith is not by sight. It's a gift, that is given. And I have March 14th, 1992 for me. I just had this quote, come to Jesus. Like it was an event that I was at, I was invited to. And I remember not even wanting to go. Patty was at it. And remember, I always wanted to do everything Patty did. And
I don't know why.
And my brother had a guy share his testimony there, but it wasn't until she shared her testimony. I went kicking and screaming. I'm like, okay, these Jesus freaks. My brother was a Jesus roller. He was, trying to save me. He was the first to like people misconstrue what the word saved is, right? It's saved by grace, right? And so Patty shared her testimony, and I just started sobbing. And it was about when you saw trust on the pavement. What was it? Trust Jesus or trust God? And I surrendered. I was like, I don't know if this is real, but I need to fill a hole, because not too long before that, I was questioning a lot in my life. And I did have an attempt that I had never told anyone until recently, that I took a whole bottle of aspirin to, thinking it would do something to me. And I was, I remember a girl in high school, never spoke scripture, never said anything. Her name was Tammy. And she wasn't the popular girl, but she was the most beautiful girl in the whole school. But she never got the accolades for it, never was on homecoming, nothing. And there was something that she had, a peace about her, a beauty about her, a calmness. And now I know it was the Holy Spirit. It was like that feeling of completion. And so that's how I felt that night. And from that moment on, just the conviction of the Holy Spirit, like everything that I did, I was like, is this how I want my life to be? Or I'm just going to draw close to. And my very first Bible was called the Student Bible, because I couldn't understand the King James. It was right. Saith and all of this. Yeah. So I found I had a student Bible that was given to me, and I just started reading it. And I started in Matthew. They always say start in Matthew. You know, if you start in the Old Testament, you're not going to like really, but I've gone from the beginning to the end.
Is that what they say? Because Matthew's my favorite.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I love Matthew.
Yeah.
Like there's so many.
Yeah.
My whole Matthew is like,
I know.
Highlighted.
Well, and the other thing is, you know, I was so afraid of Revelations because it's like, oh my gosh, it's the end times. And I think at every stage in our life, there's a different maturity. You have ears to hear better. You go through things in life. And I've been reading Revelation, and my girlfriends that I'm doing it with, 3 others, they know what I've been through, and a couple of them have been abused as well, not in the Catholic Church, but we're like, oh my gosh, look at this. Here are all the answers. And so when people say to me, like, I'm not out for vengeance of the church. Like, that is vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Like, I am praying for their salvation, their souls. I'm praying for them to be with
Reform.
me in heaven. Now, I said to Patty on the way here, I'd be really, like, my flesh, like the human side of me is like, if they're in the same room as me, and I've been good all my life, and they've done this, and then in the last minute, they can atone for that. But that's the flesh, right? But God is a forgiving God of grace. And so I want them.
She's nicer than me.
I want them to heal. No, I do. But that's,
I know.
I want
you are
them to
nicer
heal.
than me, though. We know that.
I went through most of my life, angry at God because of what
Yeah.
happened.
Right.
And when I finally, became born again, and then people online scoffed at me, like you get the trolls, the
Right.
atheist trolls,
They
like.
don't
Let them
understand
talk.
it.
Let them talk.
And it's just like, I'm like, look, man, like,
Yeah.
like I filled my mind, body, and being with anger and hate and rage and violence and drugs and alcohol and pornography and sex and sex and sex and sex and pornography. Like, it was just all crap I was constantly for decades filling myself with. And I needed like something light and positive in my being to cast that crap out. And like, so if faith did that for me,
Right.
Yeah.
like,
Why
so,
not?
like, let me rock and roll with it,
Yeah.
man. Like, you don't have to make fun of me. Like,
I love
was
when people-
dark and ugly in there,
Yeah.
It's-
You know what I say to people,
Yeah.
though, that don't believe? I say, you know what? It's okay. But what if? What if it could be something great for you? Just taste and see. You don't need the whole buffet. You don't need, like, I think some people try to save other people. It's not for me to save someone. It's not for my brother to try to save me. Like, the Lord's already working. But if somebody is in your path and says, just taste and see, what would it hurt you? Why are you so afraid to just open the Bible and just start reading? Maybe something will come to life. And if not, throw it into the fire, whatever. But what if?
I had,
It's changed
like
me.
some people get so righteous.
Yes.
And it's
Oh,
such a
yes.
turnoff to me. Like,
Me
I
too.
walked out of a quick check deli. This was probably 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And there was a lady, like standing at her car, and she had her coffee on the top, the roof. And like, I'm not even walking towards her. I'm walking
Yeah.
away from her. And she's like, read your Bible.
Right.
And I'm like,
Whatever.
and
Yeah.
I'm a born again Christian. I'm like, excuse me?
Right.
And she goes, and she had a Bible. She's like,
Yeah.
you have to read your Bible.
Yeah.
The answers are in there. I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, if she thinks she's going to convert somebody
Right.
by just screaming that at a deli, like,
Yeah.
you're
I've had
your
that- I've had that-
picking mind.
My brother did, and my brother knows this, and I love him, and I'm grateful for a lot of. He's an incredible man, and in his young faith. When you're young in your faith, you're very overzealous, and I've been that at times too. Like, you just so want people to get it right, because you want them to feel what you feel. Like, there's a lot of greatness to that. But my brother, when I let him borrow my car when I was in college, and while I was driving there, I had the radio on, and he turns it off and he goes, "That's devil worship music." And I went, "Whatever, Jesus freak," and I blared it. And so, yeah, people do go about it wrong. But I will tell you, I don't even know what I will tell you.
Childhood sexual abuse
yeah.
is just, it's insanely horrifying, And then when you add a layer of faith, right? Everybody's supposed to be able to turn to God for relief or comfort, love. And in the Catholic faith, we're taught that the priest is the mediator between God And man, like in the Bible teaches that Jesus is, right? But we're taught that the priest is. We tell him our sins. He can transform, water into or wine into the blood of God, of Jesus, and then when you realize that the person who was supposed to represent God is the one who hurt you, it really does shake the foundation of faith for a lot of people. And I can understand that. That didn't happen for me, but some of our sisters it did. And a lot of people we know it did.
And I could see how it would.
Absolutely.
Jeez.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's so heartbreaking.
What would be your last words? Like, if what would you want to say about this journey? Any life lessons? Any words of advice for the audience? Final thoughts on grooming, the church, your lives, whatever. Your last words.
I'll first say, I want to finish a little bit what you said about the woman with the Bible. It's a shame that people look at fallible people as their compass for what Christianity is. But Jesus himself hated Pharisaic people, self-righteous people. That's why he flipped over the
money lenders.
Yes.
Tables.
You've made my house a den of thieves. Don't speak for me, And so to those people listening, I'm sorry. That's not faith. Faith isn't, to the victims that are listening, because I am so saddened by victims that don't have faith, because faith is what saves my life every single day. I still battle. I have the Lord Jesus as my Savior, but I still battle every day getting out of bed. I still battle wanting to I don't physically go to church. I listen to two churches that I love because they start in the beginning of the Bible and they go to the end. They don't try to tell me what to believe. They let the Holy Spirit, flow through me and let me decipher that on my own. But to the church, and even my friends that have fathers that have victimized them, I say to all of the people that are around those people, knowing that they've been accused, to believe the survivor. Why would anyone say something like that that's false? Maybe there are some sickos out there that have done that, but that's not the general population of survivors. I didn't want to speak out. I'm ashamed to say I was the last of the sisters to say yes, because I was afraid of my own wrath that this would bring on my business, I knew it would harm my business. And for that many people that are against you, there are that many for you. I know all that. But I say, be careful how you speak about this in front of your own children about these situations, because they're listening. And you don't know if they will ever be abused. And why would they ever come out and speak out about their abuser if they hear what you're saying about somebody that did accuse something bad? So they just have to be so careful with that.
Okay. Patty?
I would just encourage anyone. I like to encourage anyone who has been abused or isn't even sure, but knows something is off within themselves, to seek counseling. And some people, it hasn't been great for them, but for me, it was very good. It helped me to understand. I still want to go back and understand some more. It's crazy how I keep talking about, how as an adult, I didn't even know I was abused. Even though I literally could talk about just like the things I talked to you about to my pastor, and he's looking at me like I'm crazy, that I don't think it was abuse that a priest would ask me to cut my pubic hairs off. Like, I literally was that crazy when I realized I was abused. But anyways, but just to seek some serious, seek counseling. I just really believe in it, and don't stop with just one counselor. You have to find the right fit. I don't know about you, if counseling worked for you, Clark, but it really worked for me.
And just be aware of how much you trust the people that your kids are with.
That's
the
what I
biggest
wanted to
thing.
hear.
Yeah.
That's the
Big
biggest
time.
thing.
Like you literally,
You know, I mean-
it's the person you trust and
Yes.
admire and look up to, the
Yeah.
the favorite coach,
Yeah.
the piano instructor,
Right.
the doctor who's so great with
Yeah.
kids,
Never leave the room.
the priest, you know,
Well,
who's from Italy, you know, this is
yeah,
how we
right.
do it in Italy.
But
you
also,
know?
I want to say to the parents of survivors, because our parents have a lot of guilt, that you can be the most perfect parents. Our parents were phenomenal. And they're still clever. They're still clever.
Yeah, so don't.
So you-
So I had an experience where I didn't want my kids to sleep over anyone's house, even family, and I called Pastor Mike's wife, and she said, "Patty, think about it this way. What is most women? What's your prized possession besides your children? Your engagement ring, right? Your diamond, your engagement ring." She said, "Imagine taking that off your finger, walking down to the corner and just handing it to somebody and say, 'Watch this overnight for me,' a stranger, someone, because a lot of times you really don't know people the way you think, and just say, 'Watch this for me overnight.'" Would you do that? Would you do that? You wouldn't do that. But your children, how precious they are. And I'm with you. I just don't think kids should sleep over people's houses until they are able to defend themselves. And even then, I mean, I'm talking like 16, you know, and even then, you know, some kids just aren't built that way. You
Right.
know,
Right.
they're just not. A true pedophile, a true perpetrator knows what they got to do, and they're usually very good at
Very
it.
good at it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
they get better each
Oh,
kid
God.
they go through. Thank
Yeah.
you, ladies.
Thank you.
It was an honor to have you in here. I appreciate
Thank you
it.
for
to see
having
you
us.
All right. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
There you have it, everybody. Another episode of the Free Like Me podcast. You cannot trust your kids with anyone. You know, that favorite coach, the cool priest, the doctor, whoever it may be, the teacher, you know, you can't give your diamond ring to a stranger on the corner, you know, so guard your kids carefully. See you next week. Peace.